order. So stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Smiles Lewis, and you are tuned in to the first inaugural Saturday Streamathon emergency fundraiser series for the Anomaly Archives Scientific Anomaly Institute. I'm the founder of that organization, and we are so glad that you've joined us tonight. Thank you all for tuning in, and if you are so inclined, please feel free to go to the website, and you can donate through GoFundMe, our PayPal, or our Facebook donations links there. And we also have a new merch store that has fantastic art by Red Pill Junkie, aka Miguel Romero, aka Red Pill Junkie, who has done this awesome art for us, and that we now have featured on a number of products through our merch store. It's brand spanking new, and you should give it a try. I plan on ordering several things myself. And without further ado, I am so excited to bring on Zelia Edgar. Hey, Zelia, how are you doing?
Hey, fine, thank you. Well, I'm very excited to be here today. So yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on.
Well, I first discovered your Just Another Tinfoil Hat YouTube channel maybe a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. I'm not sure now, but I was immediately enthralled with your approach, your very astute observations, very much informed by a lot of the same people that I really respect. And it's just always wonderful to see somebody new in the scene and to bring new energy and vitality to this esoteric realm, these different communities that we all work within. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let you get started here and see you on the other side.
Thanks. Well, thank you really too. I really appreciate hearing that. And yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for attending my presentation here on the Orb Phenomenon as a cross-field anomaly. So my name is Zelia Edgar. A little bit about me. I am a lifelong resident of the incredibly weird state of Wisconsin. And I've also had a lifelong interest in the paranormal and unexplained. And I think that I owe that quite a bit to just the bizarre history, folklore, and extensive paranormal tradition of my home state. Especially too, not only is the whole of Wisconsin very, very strange in the best way possible, but I spent a lot of time growing up in southwestern Wisconsin where my grandma lives. And, you know, the folklore of that region is still very much alive and well. You know, I grew up hearing stories about the Nodolph incident, or as it's known in Platteville, that strange night in which these two kids vanished from the inside of their locked home during a thunderstorm, you know, or hearing the macabre tale of nearby Coffee Woods. And, you know, not only did I grow up hearing about the folklore of the region, but also my family has always been very open. I'm very fortunate that they've been very open to discussing the kind of weirder things in life. My grandma remembers hearing when she was a kid that a neighbor of hers had this big hairy arm break in through a window. And then the house where my mom grew up actually had a lot of really classic haunting type occurrences. A lot of my family members have had encounters with, you know, sightings of UFOs, encounters with ghostly type phenomenon. So I feel very fortunate that I've grown up having it be almost normalized, you know, the paranormal, as opposed to being something that simply isn't talked about. And yeah, so I have had this just lifelong interest in the unexplained, and I've been seriously researching it for over a decade now. In that time, I have served as the Wisconsin State Director and a certified field investigator for the Wisconsin Mutual UFO Network. I stepped down from those positions, so I could spend more time on my personal research and my YouTube channel, Just Another Tinfoil Hat. So again, I started with a really devout interest in cryptozoology. And then as the years went by, I kind of moved through spectrology and into ufology, into kind of this current scope where I have a really special interest in cases that appear to blur the lines between these apparently different fields of research. Researchers like John Keel and Jacques Vallée have had a huge influence on my research style. And so, yeah, I'm very interested in the many patterns which appear to exist between what have been conventionally considered different types of phenomena. And so today, I'm actually going to be discussing something which definitely blurs the lines between these different fields of research, and that is the orb phenomenon. And so what are orbs exactly? You know, they're really just kind of a subset of the more general anomalous luminous phenomena. Of course, they're these just mysterious balls of light that people see in many different scenarios and many different paranormal scenarios, which is my main interest with them. Now, my real interest with orbs was actually kicked off by a personal experience I had in March of 2012. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and I was home with my two little sisters, and my mom was driving back from the store. And so she said that she looked out the car window and she thought she saw this like construction site off in the distance. And then she was realizing, she's like, wait, there's no construction site over there. And the reason she thought it was a construction site was because she thought she saw this big, construction crane just all lit up with all these lights on it. And so then she realized there's no construction site, there's no crane. There are simply these 4 balls of light floating in the sky. So, of course, she calls home and she tells me, she's like, you have to go outside. There's something in the sky. So, of course, my sisters and I just tear outside to go see what's out there. And to set the scene a little bit, it was one of those nights, again, it was in March, and it was one of those nights where the clouds were like really, really low in the sky. So they were kind of illuminated underneath by just the city lights. And the house is located on an intersection. So that's kind of the scene that, we're looking out at. So we run outside, and sure enough, right over the intersection outside of my house, there are these 4 just absolutely perfectly spherical balls of this even amber light. And, it's hard to exactly convey just how perfect they were, but they were really just these perfectly smooth spherical balls of light. And they were hovering, I would say at most between 2 to 3 stories up in the air. So they were very low. And there were 4 of them, and they were kind of in this perfectly fixed, like parallelogram sort of formation. And there was absolutely nothing behind them. So there was no like craft connecting them or anything like that. So my sisters and I are seeing these 4 lights in the sky. And my mom finally gets home. She rolls up, she gets out of the car, and we're all staring at them. And then they're like moving, drifting very slowly. And again, in this perfectly fixed sort of formation. There was no wavering whatsoever. So immediately that rules out, a Chinese lantern or anything like that. And then one by one, suddenly one starts to just blink really rhythmically and slow. And then it blinks faster and then it's just gone. And again, nothing was left behind. So it wasn't a lantern, it wasn't a balloon. And then the next one does the same thing, and then it's gone, and then the next and the next. And so it was just absolutely stunning, because here is this just amazing, sight that you're seeing, and that it was just gone. So we were just standing there waiting to see what might happen next. And all of a sudden, this is my absolute favorite part of the story. This boy tears down the street. He runs across our yard, across the street, and then up into a house, and he slams the door behind him. So we're thinking, okay, he obviously saw what we saw or something else. So my mom and I walked across the street. We knocked on the door. The kid answers it, and we're just like, hey, did you happen to see those lights? And he interrupts us, and he's like shaking his head. He's like, no, you don't understand. This isn't the first time they came over. He said that he was at a nearby school playground, like a couple blocks away. And that all of a sudden he looked up in the sky and he saw these 4 balls of light just floating over, but then they were gone. And so he figured, okay, well, they're gone. I'm safe, whatever. But then they came over again. And that's when I guess he decided that the Martians were probably already here and that he should probably get home. So, and yeah, that's just exactly what kickstarted my interest in orbs particularly. Just because, the thing that I've noticed is that they are heavily associated with each different type of paranormal phenomena. And again, I'm very interested in these patterns which appear to connect all of these apparently different fields. So that's exactly what kickstarted my interest there. And so I guess to get into kind of the particulars of orbs across these different fields, I think that the first thing that people think of when they hear the word orbs is they think of ghost orbs. And unfortunately, when they think of ghost orbs, they're not actually thinking about orbs at all. They're thinking about those photos of dust motes, condensation, and unfortunately bugs, which are just rampant across the spectrology field. And not to say that there aren't genuine photos of anomalous light phenomena, just that I believe they are indeed very few and far between, and the majority are simply camera artifacts. So the cases that really interest me involving ghost orbs are going to be those that are seen with the naked eye. And it's amazing, but there are, many, many haunted locations which count orbs among their most prominent types of phenomena. Places like the Matthias Ham House in Dubuque, Iowa, home to apparitions, unexplained voices, and cold spots, or the infamous Rockwood Mansion in Delaware, which has a whole slew of apparitions, including even a ghost dog. Both of these places claim that orbs are also spotted on the premises or grounds. Cemeteries too, haunted cemeteries are heavily, heavily associated with orb phenomena. Places like Bachelor's Grove in Chicago, known for apparitions, or Dartford Cemetery in Green Lake, Wisconsin, which is known for these shadow people. Again, people will see orbs floating around these cemeteries. And orbs are also associated with poltergeist phenomena too. A famous example of this would be the Doris Byther case, the entity case, which occurred in 1974 and involved researchers who were trying to figure out exactly what was going on. Ironically enough, in this case, the researchers claimed that they were seeing a lot of anomalous light phenomena that they simply could not get photos of. So there you kind of have this inversion of the by now cliche ghost photos, where these people were seeing light phenomena that they just, the majority of the time, could not capture on film. I think that probably the next field that's most closely associated with the orb phenomena would be the UFO field, and with good reason. Right now, the National UFO Reporting Center currently has over 7,000 cases labeled as fireballs, and 6,000 more cases labeled as spherical type objects. The orbs are one of the most commonly reported types of UFOs, especially in the Great Lakes region. And this is for a variety of reasons. Of course, people in the UFO field tend to say that maybe there are like, secret bases or something that these orbs actually belong to. Again, I think that there's probably more than one right answer as it pertains to paranormal phenomena. But indeed, orbs are really associated with water and waterways. I know too that when I was with MUFON, the majority of the cases which I investigated had to do with orb-like objects. And this is by no means an exclusively new phenomenon. You have a lot of old reports, even mythological accounts of balls of fire moving across the sky, which were usually viewed as symbols of importance, right up through the infamous airship wave of 1896 to 97, amid the much more kind of sensational accounts of contact with these airship inventors. Fireballs were commonly reported to newspapers during that time. And this moves right up through, again, the current age. Silent Invasion, Stan Gordon's Silent Invasion, is a fantastic account of the just anomalous outbreak which occurred in Pennsylvania in the years of 73 to 74. And we're going to get into that in a little bit here too, regarding some of the cryptid accounts. But many different types of UFOs were reported at this time, including, very conventional, almost like flying saucer type objects. But many of the accounts were of balls of light or fire. And of course, the December of 1965 flap which occurred over most of the United States. The sightings were of an orb-like object. Now, not only are orbs reported simply as UFOs, but they're also seen in conjunction with other types of craft, such as a case from September of 2005 in Big Sur, where a diamond-shaped object emitted orbs of light. Now, to take a step slightly away simply from UFOs and kind of into the more, I guess you could say, esoteric aspects of the UFO field, orbs are also associated with the abduction belief and phenomenon. And even to take a step further from that, researcher Jenny Randles uncovered that many repeater witnesses, and this isn't even exclusively repeater witnesses of UFOs or people who believe that they've had repeat abductions, but people who have had psychic phenomena their entire lives, people who have seen ghosts for the majority of their lives, people who have seen cryptids, people, again, who have seen UFOs or believe they've been abducted, or any combination of these different fields. Jenny Randles uncovered that many of these witnesses had early sightings of light anomalies, commonly sightings of orbs. Now, the field of paranormal research, which is not as heavily associated with the orb phenomenon simply because, I believe, of convention, would be the field of cryptozoology. However, orbs are also spotted in conjunction with cryptids. One great account, of course, is Momo, the infamous Missouri monster, which was observed in Louisiana, Missouri in the summer of 1972. Now, not only does this area have a long history of a spook light nearby, but right around the time that the Missouri monster was being spotted, there were these sightings of these green and white fireballs floating through the sky. Now, there was a lot of other high strangeness associated with these encounters as well, such as disembodied voices, the sound of screams, and yeah, spook lights, again, are also prominent in that area. Now, too, the Rochdale, Indiana creature, which was also observed in 1972 in August, this is a really fantastic account of genuine high strangeness, where there was this Bigfoot-like creature, which was observed by multiple people over the period of a couple weeks. And the amazing thing here is that it was actually blamed for a very material attack on, I think, over 100 chickens in the area, while other people claimed that it was almost like some sort of apparition, that it was nearly see-through, or that it wouldn't leave tracks through the muddy fields through which it walked. Now, these encounters were actually kicked off again by this anomalous light in the sky, which was observed over a field, which exploded. And then two, from Stan Gordon's Silent Invasion. This is truly just a fantastic collection of the just insane levels of anomalous phenomena that were going on in 1973 and 74 in Pennsylvania. And among these are these really amazing encounters of people seeing these Bigfoot-like creatures with orbs of light. From Beaver County in September of 1973, two teenage girls claimed that they observed a white 7 to 8 foot tall Bigfoot-like creature, which was actually carrying a luminescent sphere in one hand. And then in Derry Township, a farm which had had recurrent strange activity, which included Bigfoot sightings, ESP phenomena, and a UFO sighting, was also host to a sighting of an orb. And there's a truly intriguing case from October of 1973 in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, where a couple driving to visit with family noticed this large, round, red object in the sky. And this was noticed by other family members. And they claimed that they were hearing these whirring noises, the sound of a baby crying in the area. And so when they finally arrived at their destination, several neighbors and the husband agreed to go out after it and see exactly what it was. Now, as they approached the area where this giant sphere of light appeared to have been going, their car lights dimmed the closer they got, as though there was some sort of electromagnetic disturbance happening. What they saw then was this huge object on the ground, and it was no longer spherical or red. It was now this glowing white dome. There were these two bipedal creatures walking towards them with glowing eyes, and there's a just truly bizarre case of possession, which followed this sighting. And of course, too, to kind of move into spooklight territory. Spooklights, of course, are these recurrent sightings of these balls of light, which happen in many different places, such as the Gurdon light in Arkansas. It's this multicolored light which is seen to bob up and down a railway and has been observed for years. Then, too, there's the Hoyabashi Forest in Romania, which is known as a UFO and ghost hotspot. This is also home to Orb Phenomenon. Or the Devil's Punch Bowl in Menominee, Wisconsin, where people have claimed to have had sightings of gnomes and these anomalous, colorful lights. And then, too, the Hestelin lights in Norway. These apparently are these strange atmospheric orbs of light, which there's actually been this long-running research team trying to figure out exactly what causes them. So not only do orbs appear simply in conjunction with these different types of paranormal cases or on their own year after year, they are also associated definitely with high strangeness. A place of infamy, Skinwalker Ranch, is host to tons of different unexplained phenomena, among which are these mysterious blue orbs, which were actually held responsible for incinerating 3 of the ranch's owners' dogs. And then, too, this is very similar, not exactly to orbs, but again, to a different type of anomalous light phenomena. When John Keel was in Point Pleasant during the paranormal extravaganza of the Mothman sightings, there was this particular field that he would walk through, and he would visit with what he referred to as his purple friends, these strange, anomalous balls of purple light that he would see night after night. Well, one day he actually spoke to the farmer who owned the field, and the guy said, he was like, oh yeah, I actually don't go down there anymore, because he said that apparently dogs would go missing in that area. So Keel had been traipsing through this area where dogs had apparently just evaporated. And two, one of my favorite, just absolutely out of left field accounts would be the walking tree stumps of Spokane, which occurred in 1966. This woman claimed that she observed these walking multicolored tree stumps. Later on in the area, 25 people reported UFO sightings, even several sightings of humanoid figures. Now, the tie here is that the initial witness home was then haunted by balls of light after observing these bizarre walking tree stumps. And two, orbs, they've appeared in conjunction with many, many different belief systems, many different folklores of many different places. You have the dragon tracks of ancient China and the fairy lights, of course, of across much of Europe. So orbs are this kind of just ever-present type of anomalous phenomena, which kind of inserts itself into any belief system regarding other unexplainable phenomena at the time. So, of course, as with any field in the paranormal, misidentifications do happen. I already slightly covered photographic evidence. Unfortunately, lens flares, dust motes, condensation, bugs, these are responsible, I would say, for the majority of orb photographs. And again, I think that this is likeliest to occur within the ghost or UFO field. I know when I was with MUFON, there were plenty of photos sent in where it was simply some sort of lens flare, which someone took to be a UFO, which magically showed up on film, or digital, I suppose I should say. And two, regarding, actual sightings with the naked eye. Yeah, eyewitness misidentification also happens. Reflections of headlights, those Chinese lanterns, which are indeed the bane of UFO investigators' collective existence. And of course, even the much beloved swamp gas, these can all cause people to believe that they are seeing some sort of anomalous light. Now, I don't believe that this accounts for every encounter, obviously, just that these things do have to be ruled out before we go on to claim that something is anomalous. So ball lightning, too, is another thing which is brought up quite a bit in conjunction with the orb phenomenon. And the tricky thing with ball lightning is that technically we're not exactly sure what it is. So it is, as of yet, still fairly unexplained. I know there are a lot of really good theories as to what it might be. It just is that we simply even haven't nailed down exactly what that is. And two, if ball lightning is to blame, I'd like to know why it's showing up in conjunction with Bigfoot. So the other thing, too, is that, there are certain behaviors which orbs are almost known for, or which they have a tendency to do, such as going into bodies of water, disappearing into power lines and street lamps, or hovering over power centers. And again, like I said, the propensity for them to show up in conjunction with other unexplained phenomena. I think that this is evidence that there is some connecting thread between these different types of phenomena, that we have the same type of objects showing up in conjunction with them. Because, that's kind of the problem with orbs, is that they're treated as a standalone phenomenon, yet they really are exclusively defined by circumstances. If you see a ball of light inside of your home, you're going to think, oh, well, my house is haunted, I have a ghost. If you see one outside in the sky, you've seen a UFO. If you see one with Bigfoot, people think you're crazy. So unfortunately, with orbs, we don't really define them by any inherent qualities that they specifically possess. We define them by what's around them. And I think that in a way, this is kind of like, it shows that there is a connection, which is, very interesting, and it shows that there are patterns between them. But like, what exactly is an orb then? I think that, it is, the thing with the ball lightning is that we can see that electromagnetic energy can manifest in these anomalous shapes, typically spherical. And so I think that this is kind of maybe the thread which connects all of these apparently different fields. It's generally accepted that ghosts and UFOs can cause electromagnetic field effects. Now, whether they themselves are of an electromagnetic nature, that's another matter. But one thing is certain, they can and have been seen to cause these energetic effects. In Elmwood, one of the 3 UFO capitals in Wisconsin, in the Tuttle Hill incident of 1976, police officer George Wheeler's car was actually fried by a sighting of a UFO. Surprisingly enough, a previous sighting by Wheeler was of an orb-like object. Battery drain and ghost hunting have been connected for a long time in research. And surprisingly enough, too, cryptids have also been known to cause EMF disturbances. There's this fantastic account from around Marlinton, West Virginia in October of 1960, in which a man by the name of Doc Priestley was driving along. He was following 2 of his buddies. They were going to go turkey hunting. And so his 2 friends were in a hunting bus, and he was following in his car, when all of a sudden his car had started to stall. And he claimed, it's really funny, but like in the newspapers of the time, he claimed that it had been purring like a kitten prior to that. There were no problems with the car, and all of a sudden it started to sputter. He claimed that the car came to a stop, and he looked to the side of the road and saw this Bigfoot-like creature with its hair standing on end. And so eventually his buddies realized that he was no longer following them. So they returned to see what had happened. And he claimed that the creature looked like it was scared of the approaching hunting bus. Its hair dropped, and his car started up just fine. So he continued on his merry way. And a few miles down the road, the same thing happened. He said that this time he could actually see sparks flying under the hood, like there was a very bad short. The car stopped completely. He looked to the side of the road, and there again was the same creature with its hair standing on end. So again, his buddies returned to see what had happened. The creature ran off, but this time his car was totally fried out. The points had been burnt. And then there was a similar case in Yakima, Washington, 1966, where a silver-haired Sasquatch was spotted and the witness's engine stalled. So again, cryptids which aren't conventionally tied to electromagnetic disturbances can be seen to have caused them, or at least it's very coincidental that the disturbance happened at the same time that the creature was spotted. So I think that orbs are kind of evidence of some sort of energetic difference. And again, this ties to the ball lightning thing. What if they are almost some sort of like byproduct of something which is happening in conjunction with paranormal phenomena? As to what that might be, there are a ton of different theories as to why these electromagnetic field disturbances occur in conjunction with these apparently different manifestations. One of my personal favorite theories, of course, is the superspectrum theory, which was really propounded by John Keel. Now, it simply acknowledges that we only regularly inhabit and observe only a fraction of the energetic spectrum. And to take this a step further, Keel propounded that there are things that exist outside of the spectrum. And this doesn't necessarily mean that they are interdimensional, or that they come from some other dimension. That's immediately what people think. But of course, X-rays and microwaves are super spectrum, but not necessarily interdimensional. So this concept then is that these paranormal manifestations don't actually exist solely in our field of energy, but that they kind of move through our plane of existence, never really inhabiting it. And this actually is a really great theory for explaining a lot of the incredibly anomalous behaviors of many different types of paranormal phenomena, such as ghosts appearing and vanishing. UFOs consistently perform maneuvers that would absolutely tear apart any sort of machine, no matter how unconventional. And cryptids too, again, classically, cryptids have been thought to be simply undiscovered creatures, but many times they exhibit these very anomalous actions, such as vanishing, shorting cars. And if you look at the folklore, many cultures place these monsters kind of at the border of reality, claiming that they sort of exist at this boundary between the material and the immaterial, between this world and the spirit world, and that they can have magical qualities. It seems as though this is an attempt to explain something which isn't always at this field of existence. And I think that too, it's one of those things where there's smoke, there's fire. It seems that energetic disturbances really follow any type of unexplained phenomena. And I believe that the prevalence of orbs throughout every apparently different field only adds to this similarity. However, the very intriguing thing then is, what exactly is the smoke and what is the fire? Are orbs simply a byproduct of some energetic system by which paranormal occurrences manifest? If we are looking at these things as existing outside of the spectrum, whenever they slip through into our portion of the spectrum, is there some sort of energetic difference, which almost has this byproduct, then almost this exhaust, which manifests into orbs? Or, as some researchers such as John Keel and Patrick Harper have suggested, could it be that the light phenomenon, the orbs, or any other sort of light anomaly, are the only genuine thing about the phenomenon, and that the manifestation itself is the mask? Some researchers do believe that when people see, something such as a ghost or Bigfoot or a UFO, it's actually all the same thing. It's the thing behind that which is genuine, and the apparent manifestation is completely subjective. So I think, though, that the interesting thing is that if orbs are evidence of some sort of electromagnetic field disturbance, this can be seen to either be evidence of a larger construct, which is responsible for these different manifestations, or at least of a common thread between these apparently different fields of research. And, that, again, that's very exciting to me. Now, personally, too, I don't think that there's going to be one right answer when it comes to any field of the paranormal. I think that there's going to be a whole variety of different things which are probably occurring, especially too, cryptozoology was my first love, and old habits die hard. The one thing that I would really love to be, kind of its conventional explanation would be Bigfoot. Again, it's kind of a matter of nostalgia for me. However, when we have these Bigfoot encounters where very anomalous things are happening, such as, again, vanishing or magically appearing, fading away, showing up in conjunction with orbs, it can't simply be one answer in my mind. I think that there is a lot of evidence for some sort of physical creature that would match Bigfoot's description, but then you have these other encounters. So I think that there is, there's going to be a combo of different things going on here. But I mean, that's the exciting thing, is that, the paranormal is simply that which is currently outside the normal, which we can't currently explain. And, I think too that if we can start nailing down these similarities between these apparently different fields, then we'll have a clearer idea going forward of what exactly doesn't fit these patterns. In which case, we would be looking at some sort of, easily to define sort of explanation. And orbs, really, they're not in a majority of these sightings, but they are in a measurable they're not in a majority of like sightings of Bigfoot or sightings of UFOs, but they are in a measurable fraction of sightings. And it's that measurable fraction which I am very interested in, because it is evidence of a pattern between these previously unconnected fields of research. And I think, again, that the more we can define the patterns between them, the easier it will be to understand the unexplainable. So, yeah, orbs, I mean, they are just, I think that they are heavily associated, again, with ghosts and UFOs, not so much with cryptids, but they're just prevalent and ever present across these different fields. And so that pattern is definitely something to focus on. But I suppose I still have some time here, so if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask, you can do so in the chat over here. Whoa. So. Oh,
there we go. Sorry, wasn't trying to interrupt or break up your talk. No, thank you for all of that. Definitely some interesting comments and questions in the chat. I saw a little ways back an interesting comment from one of the attendees that said, this is Flynn Ryder from my research, a race of grays called Koshnak can turn into orbs. And then, of course, Red Pill Junkie Miguel said exactly what you were saying as far as context. It's all a matter of where people see this, what other aspects are occurring when they see it, and their expectation. And I think that is an important aspect of this. And it brought to mind the work of a now deceased good friend, Rob Riggs, who did a wonderful book about the Big Thicket in East Texas. And he and I were lucky enough to go on a couple of expeditions with some other fellow Texan Bigfooters. And he definitely had a more paranormal approach to the subject, which, of course, did not endear him to the blood and gutter types. But every one of them always had some strange story to tell that fit right in, and very often it involved an orb. And so, what's the most common thing in these same parts of East Texas? The Bragg Road, the Ghost Road, this long straight track that is historic for its weird orb phenomena. So,
yeah, no, that is. I mean, and yeah, the context of these things, that's something too that just is so interesting to me, is how these belief systems kind of almost become catch-alls, and then the walls are put up between the different fields of research. And I think that, again, that's the thing with the paranormal, is that, conventional, like, quote unquote normal people view all of this as the fringe. And so, when you start putting stuff at the fringe of the fringe, well, we're all already kind of in the same boat with that. So I think that it really is important not to be dogmatic about anything, even about not being dogmatic. Again, I am a fan of the super spectrum theory. I'm a fan of looking at all of these different patterns. And I think that there is kind of, a very non-conventional explanation for a lot of the paranormal. But again, I definitely think that there is the possibility that there could be a flesh and blood Bigfoot out there. I think there's also the possibility that there's very paranormal Bigfoot out there. So, the whole thing is just exciting to me. So I guess that's kind of where I come at it from.
Yes, and this idea of Keel's, the super spectrum hypothesis, has been fascinating to me, and so many. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about the idea of dimensions, interdimensional ideas, and this idea of the super spectrum of it's here in our dimension, but it's just we only see it as it passes through that part of the visual spectrum that our limited vision capabilities are able to perceive. And for me, one of the I was so glad to have you talk about this subject, because it is so connected to all these different phenomena. It is absolutely in every type of traditional esoteric encounter phenomena. And one of the ways I often lead in talking about strange phenomena is the fact that all human cultures on this planet have long felt that that disembodied consciousness often manifests as a ball of light. And if you work from right then and there, then it doesn't have to be alien. It doesn't have to be interdimensional. It could be some kind of afterlife phenomena. But none of these explanations necessarily solve the riddle. We had another a comment and question from Red Pill. Have you read the book The Supernatural?
I have not, but it is on my list, actually. Yeah, that is something that's definitely on my list, because Kreipel, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, but I've read one of his books, and it's just simply fantastic. And I think that, and Strieber too, I read several of his books, and they are incredibly interesting. And I think that, again, it's these ways of looking at the phenomenon, which is different from how it has conventionally been looked at, because, we do come from a very kind of separate way of looking at these different fields. And I think that coming at it from including, a psychological and almost historical anthropological way of looking at these things is what's going to show that there is a deep connection between us and the phenomenon as well. So.
Absolutely. And folks can support Zelia by visiting her website, justanothertinfoilhat.com, and of course the YouTube channel by the same name. And there's a couple other comments or questions. Actually, I was not familiar with this race, the Koshnak, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, that Flynn is referring to, describes him as the race connected with Gulf Breeze and Ed Walters, which, no controversy there.
Yeah.
And that's a classic aspect of all of these things. And I really, again, appreciate the fact that you bring in the Bigfoot angle, because like I was saying, with the East Texas, and then with your reference to the Momo encounters and these other crazy encounters. And when I say crazy, I mean it in the most affectionate way. I don't mean no ridicule to anyone, even as I might be going, I just don't know if I can believe that, or you, or whoever is telling me these strange stories.
Well, and two, I'm just mentioning a lot of the intrigue which does happen with the paranormal field. When I started looking at the paranormal, again, I was a kid, and I was really into cryptozoology. And then I started looking into all the other stuff, and I started realizing, hey, there's a lot of genuine stuff. There's a lot of people genuinely trying to figure out, they've had their lives turned upside down. They're trying to figure out a new context for reality when something breaks it. And then on the flip side, you do have a lot of the sort of questionable stuff which happens. And for a long time, I would just get very annoyed, when I'm like, well, I don't know what to believe here. And I've come to kind of to this conclusion where I think that in every regard, even hoaxes have a worth, because I feel like there is definitely almost a trickster aspect to paranormal phenomena. And in a way, I feel as though even fictions associated with it, or things that, are rather dubious, I think that it almost interplays with the paranormal, because of course there are these fantastic accounts where there'll be crop circle makers, like genuine people faking a crop circle or doing something for an advertisement. And then a couple fields over, the same night they did it, there's this anomalous crop circle which just pops up. So I think that there is an intelligence to the paranormal, which is also, it's very much into mimicry and into almost calling our bluff in an odd way. And I don't mean intelligence as some sort of personal intelligence. I think that there is just, whether it's a simple function of some unknown aspect of the human mega subconscious, or indeed some sort of other intelligence, that's the big question for me.
Yeah, indeed. And again, the bringing up the crop circle, because crop circle phenomena, I firmly believe that the vast majority kind of are IFOs, are known man-made art. But even as Greg Bishop and others have reported, talking to circle makers who claim very seriously that, yes, I make these things, but I feel like I'm being driven to do it. And then these other strange phenomena often manifest in and around them when they're doing these things. And of course, one of the more famous hoax videos of the balls of light forming a crop circle, one of the earliest GIFs I think I ever saw on the internet. Another listener just wanted to call out how much they're enjoying your talk, and we thank you too for that. Was it repeaters that you brought up, Jenny Randall's, in the context of?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's, of course, another area that researchers find the subject so difficult to wrangle with. It's one thing when we think of these things as anomalous, thus the Anomaly Archives, like, oh, it's unusual to see or experience these strange phenomena, but what really we're the normal archives, actually, is what we should be called, because these things actually seem to be very normal.
Well, that's exactly true. I mean, and again, I wish there could be numbers with this, but the truth is that so much paranormal phenomena goes unreported because people believe that if they come out and they explain, I saw a UFO, or I lived in a haunted house, or this, that, or the other, that people are going to ridicule them. People are going to think that they're crazy. But what I've found is just even in casual conversation with people, I'm very open about the fact that I'm interested in the paranormal. And so one of my first questions I'll ask someone when I meet them is, hey, have you ever seen a UFO? And, pull a total Fox Mulder there. And more often than not, people will say, well, I don't think it was a UFO, but I saw this light in the sky once. Or, well, I didn't see a UFO, but I had this weird occurrence at my house, when I was a kid. And they'll tell me something else. And so I do really believe that, we call it the paranormal, but I think that it is far more normal, that more people than not have had experiences, or even one experience that they simply can't explain. So.
And absolutely. And that's so often when people find out that I am interested in, dreams or paranormal or UFOs or Bigfoot, it's like they'll confide in me about some strange thing that happened, or it's just weird synchronicities and that sort of thing. And it does seem to be a lot more widespread, which also reminds me of something I brought up with a friend last night, the infamous Roper poll, where they commissioned the mass survey of Americans and came up with this dramatic figure that's often been touted by believers and rejected by skeptics, that 1 in 50 people has been abducted or had an alien abduction experience. And if you look at the nature of the survey, it's clear that these are the kinds of experiences that, yes, certain abduction researchers consider them associated with it, with what they're studying, alien abductions. But there's so much in there about flying in dreams and things that, like, well, almost anybody might have had that experience. But what I was telling this friend last night was how when I worked for a computer game company here in Austin many, many years ago, they had about 150 employees. And of course, as word got out of my areas of interest, people started confiding in me. And I only worked there for about a year, but at least 3 people out of 150 confided in me that they felt they had what they described as alien abduction experiences. So that was kind of a weird, confirmation of something that I actually kind of reject as far as the Roper poll. But
that's too, to bring up like the alien abduction phenomena is something, a whole just can of worms, in my opinion. And again, you kind of like, when I started my interest in UFOs, it was very like, well, I want to know what people see. And then the abduction stuff started coming, and I was like, well, this is a little bit more complicated than I thought. And the intriguing thing, I kind of have a personal connection to that, is that, again, the house where my mom grew up had a lot of classic haunting type phenomena that was going on. And then there was other stuff that went on too. My mom and one of her older sisters had what I can only describe as a sighting of a UFO, a potential period of missing time. And then her sister, even though I'm interested in this, my family knows I'm interested in this, and they're very open about it, she never really goes into full detail, but she described how after this sighting, she started having dreams, out-of-body experiences, things like that. And so again, too, do we lop that in, oh, well, probably an alien abduction, or do we say that this is more in line with psychic phenomena or even shamanistic phenomena? And I think that there are just so many connecting points which tie all of these different giant balls of yarn together. And it's fantastic and exciting to me, at least. So.
And those balls of yarn are sometimes the way people describe the wriggly aspect of some of these balls of light. So, and one of our speakers for another Streamathon Saturday, Twee Snyder, had this to say, and that is that she's a new subscriber to your channel. So
thank you very much.
Twee is great, and we'll look forward to her talk as well. And as the ticker at the bottom can tell you, folks, you can support Zelia by going to her website, justanother10foilhat.com, and her YouTube channel of the same name. And we really appreciate her being here today and being a part of our fundraising efforts. And I guess if there's any other questions before we, bid you adieu. Yes, just people reassuring us when you're open about your interests, people will tell you their stories.
Oh, yes.
So I think that's again part of it, is just not having a judgmental approach to this. So and just thanks everybody for tuning in and interacting with Zelia today. So
thank you very much for inviting me. I had a great time. So thank you.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you later, and have a great day.
Thanks.